God add blessing to the reading of His Word and also to our understanding. Well, today I want to talk about relationships outside your faith. There's a couple ways of looking at that. I'll look at both of them if I can today for you for a little bit. Part of that question is, what does it mean to fall in love with or be in a relationship with someone who's also a Christian but of a different tradition? And I got to tell you that home life is easier, just easier. It doesn't mean better or worse, it's just easier if you're in a marriage relationship or your partner and you go to the same church. It's easier that way. It doesn't make it better, it's just easier. Sometimes couples, when they couple together, when they become a couple, choose a compromised church. This often happens in the United Methodist Church when former Catholics and former Baptists marry each other. Because in the Methodist Church, we're kind of high church, we're kind of liturgical, we're kind of evangelical, we get kind of emotional at the same time. So my denomination, a lot of people like that. My denomination is a good kind of combination for people who were once Catholic and once Baptist when they fall in love. Sunday morning is at least less complicated, especially when you have children, if you go to the same church. Now, when my kids were little, I was a pastor of a church, and so I got up on Sunday mornings really early, and I left to go to church, and so I never had to get my kids ready for church. And so I didn't know. I didn't know what maybe you knew if you grew up in a family that went to church. I didn't know what it's like for parents to get up on Sunday morning, get their kids out of bed, feed them, make sure they get good clothes on, feed them some breakfast, make sure they don't spill the cereal on that new dress, and get to church on time. I've never experienced that until a friend of mine clued me in. One Sunday morning, he said, Sunday morning is the worst time of the whole week, trying to get everybody up and ready to go to church. That is the worst time of the week. And everybody, if you come to church, and everybody with small kids are already in a bad mood once they get to church. I didn't know that. I didn't know why people were kind of grumpy at church. It wasn't me. I was going to say I had trouble getting the kids dressed. We need to remember that, Paul. On Sunday morning, people were kind of glum faces. They just had trouble getting people ready for church. Imagine what that would be like if you're trying to get ready to go to two different churches. What would that be like? Or what would it be like if one person in a family didn't go to church at all? Gosh, I'd rather stay with him or her in my pajamas than get up and get dressed and go out to Sunday school and stuff, So it's just easier. It's easier if you find a church together that you can be involved in. Find a way to connect spiritually in the same room. Because it's a funny thing about attractions. Funny thing. We don't wear name tags. We don't wear name tags that say, my name's Ira and I'm a Methodist. We don't say wear name tags, my name is Judy and I'm Catholic. We don't wear name tags like that. And I know that when you walk across the campus, and you see someone who's attractive, you don't think to yourself, wow, he looks like a really hot Quaker. You don't say that. But the funny thing about relationships and attractions is over the long haul, those religious similarities and differences become more and more important. And don't get me wrong, I hope that whatever attracts you to someone at the beginning stays that strong all your life. That you are attracted physically, emotionally, all your days in the same way that you are when you first are attracted. But you need to know, you need to remember that those religious differences sort of become more important. Equally as important as anything else. Whether someone's Catholic or Methodist or Baptist or Mennonite or Lutheran or Episcopalian, just to name a few. If you're falling in love and wondering about whether or not you should commit to this person, you need to find out something about what their religious tradition is and what that means to them. Now, my goddaughter is Baker graduate, 2005, I believe. Got married in the year 2010, and she grew up a Methodist, but her husband was Catholic, and she converted to Catholicism. I think that was just perfect for her, just absolutely perfect for her. I assisted in their wedding, as a matter of fact, in Kansas City. It was a great day, beautiful wedding. And the priest invited me. Get this, if you're Catholic, this is going to be really, really big. The priest invited me to help serve communion in the Catholic Church. Really? How about that? There were a lot of people as confused looking as you are looking right now. There were like 500 people in this church. and half of them were Methodist, half of them were Catholic, and everybody was confused. I was sitting holding the line. There I was, because I know how to do this. That really is unheard of, but you know, I mean, it's one of the top 10 spiritual moments of my life, really. It's one thing I'm going to take with me the rest of my life. You know, I'm thinking about the things that I've done here at Baker. I met Margaret Thatcher, and I served communion in the Catholic Church. Those are like the two biggest things that ever happened to me since I've been working here. It's crazy. Now, on the other hand, a ministerial colleague of mine, a pastor of a church, is married to a woman who's not Methodist. They've been married a long time, love each other, have kids. But she doesn't go to church with them. He's a pastor of a church, she goes to her own church. It seems to work for them, they're happy. It wouldn't work for me, it seems strange, seems awkward. But sometime when they were dating, or sometime as they were considering coupling up and becoming a married couple, don't you know that they had to have that conversation? They had to sit down and say, okay, what are we going to do about our religious differences here? How important is our relationship that we're going to do something about these religious differences? How are we going to handle that? Remember I told you a couple weeks ago that if religious compatibility is important to you, that you need to pray with your dates. Remember that? We're still talking about it, I think, at the XYZ house on the dance floor. You got to pray with your dates. Because like everything else in your life, the spiritual rules of the relationship are really up to yours to establish. It's the same thing as you talk about money or child raising or those pesky in-laws. Because everything has to be on the table if you're in a relationship. Everything has to be on the table. I encourage couples sometimes, a lot of times, I encourage if they ask, to find ways to pray with each other every day. And not for a whole long time, maybe 2-3 minutes. And here's how you do this. And if you're in a relationship, you might try to see how it works. You get 2 or 3 minutes just to sit down at the table with each other and hold hands across the table and look at each other. Don't have to close your eyes. Look at each other eyeball to eyeball and say, what is it that I can pray for you about today? What is it today that I can pray for you about? And then say, I want you to know that you're in my thoughts and prayers every day, and you are precious to me as a child of God. So it has nothing to do with denominations, right? Spirituality, the connection spirit to spirit, is really important. Any kind of relationship. You can do that now with technology. Now you can do that with FaceTime and Skype and all that if someone's out of town. Connect with each other 2 or 3 times each day, morning and night, just for a couple minutes, just to focus primarily on the 3 of you, the 2 of you and God, in their relationship. This is something I encourage anyone who's in a relationship to try and do. Now, the bigger issue is what happens if you fall in love with someone who's from a different religious tradition than Christian. So far we've talked about the different branches of Christendom, but what happens if you fall in love with someone who's Jewish or Muslim or Buddhist? And once upon a time, Islam and Hinduism and Buddhism and all the rest were religions of the world, but from other parts of the world, other continents. But there are people in the United States who are 3rd, 4th generation U.S. citizens who are Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist. And so those religions are no longer religions of the world, but religions indigenous to the United States. Part of our culture, part of who we are in our world, in our countries. And so you're likely to know people of other religions. And perhaps you will date someone from another religion. Perhaps you'll commit to each other and marry someone of a religion other than Christian. I've officiated at Jewish Christian weddings, and I've officiated at Muslim Christian weddings. And one of the great things about being on a college campus is you get a chance to do that more often than if I were a pastor of a church. And so that's been another one of the great things that I've been able to do. It was once, true story, once upon a time, true story, a Christian woman married a Jewish man, and she told me that her close friends had asked her if she was sad that she was married to a Jewish man. And she wanted to know why they would think she was sad, and they said because when you both die, you'll be in heaven and he'll be in hell, and you'll be able to spend eternity with your husband. Really? Well, number one, that's wrong on so many levels. One of them is, what kind of friend says that to you? Really? Your friend really said that to you? But if you haven't come up with an answer for that question, if you really think that if someone is a Christian, they're in heaven, and someone not a Christian, they're in hell, if you really think that that's the case, then you probably ought not to fall in love with someone from a different religion. On the other hand, we'll look at it from another perspective, and this is going to be a bit controversial, okay? So are you ready for this? Can you handle controversy, John? Okay. It really boils down to John 14, the scripture that I read. Those wonderfully assuring words of Jesus about life and life everlasting, about how we're not supposed to worry, because Jesus has gone and prepared a room for us in heaven, and will come again and will take us to that place. And then these very troublesome words from verse 6 that have been used, not as words of comfort, but as words of weapons to inflict pain. When Jesus says, no one comes to the Father except through me. Now, remember, I said to you before, never use the Bible as the weapon. There are no sharp edges, there are no spears sticking out of the Bible that you can use to inflict pain on anybody. And some Christians believe that what Jesus means is that only Christians are in heaven, but this woman's friends thought that. Only Christians are in heaven. And you may think that, and I'll respect that in you, and support you and respect you in that. I just want to give you a different way to look at that, a different way to think about that, because that's what we do in college. That makes this different from a church. We're in college, and so we're thinking about things in new and kind of different ways and seeing other points of view. What happens if what Jesus means here is that Jesus stands by the gate of heaven and welcomes anyone who comes by? Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu. That the religion on earth doesn't really matter, but you get to see Jesus as you walk into heaven. Isn't that possible? No one comes to the Father except through me. What if God's love is greater than our religions? What if God's acceptance is greater than any of us individually? What if we will be surprised when we see who's in heaven with us? I mean, what are you going to do? You get to heaven and you go in and you go, well, there's some Jewish people here, I'm leaving. Really? I don't think you're going to do that. I mean, I'm not going to do that. I just don't think it's something you want to do. Well, what if that woman's friends are all dead wrong, that they're Jewish people in heaven? What happens then? Very scandalized by that? Does that really throw you for a loop? We don't really think when we fall in love first about what religion this person is that's just attractive to us. That good sense of humor, they look good, they smell good, whatever it is that attracts us to those people. You don't ask for the pedigree at first. The point is that relationships of any kind outside your faith, with Christians, of other faith traditions, or other religions in the world, those things are really, really complicated. Really complicated. Sometimes really messy. Sometimes really difficult to navigate yourself through. All I know is that if you find yourself in love or wanting to commit to someone of a different religion, whether it's a different Christian faith or a different world religion, it takes commitment and compromise and devotion, which, as it turns out, is the same thing you need for any other facet of your relationship. Talk about money, you need commitment, compromise, and devotion. Talk about in-laws, you need commitment, compromise, and devotion. So my thoughts on marrying outside your own religious past and tradition. One of the things that we teach here is one of the common kind of cliche words that we use is that we like to get you out of your comfort zone. And sometimes when you fall in love, you find yourself completely out of your comfort zone. Just some things to think about. So next week, I'm going to be talking to the questions that have come to me about what does it mean to be a spiritual leader in a family? What does it mean to be a spiritual helper in a family? So that's next week. And until then, let's stand and sing.